Okay, I'm having one more go at this agnosticism thing, and particularly to do with this state of not knowing, which I just made another video about, and how just because you say you don't know something doesn't mean to say you're not religious, because a religion has as much not knowingness, or can be as, or can orient itself around not knowing as much as anything else. So what's the difference between these not knowings? And I think, at least I'd like to suggest, that it's a felt sense. I know felt senses don't have a lot of credibility in many ways, but they are their uses, you know, the feelings, if you like, those feelings. They're not facts, as they say in the programme. Feelings aren't facts, but if they're judiciously applied, they can be good guides towards facts, although of course you've got to be really careful because they can lead you in the opposite direction of facts as well. But yeah, feelings. I think I made a bunch of videos a while back about the feeling of knowing. This came out of Robert Burton's book called On Being Certain, but also some stuff that Eugene Gendlin writes about when he talks about the feeling of knowing within experience. And what I was saying in that one is that coming out of Burton, there is this, when you know something, it isn't just that you know it, but it's accompanied by a feeling of knowing. And it's most recognisable in its absence. And Burton gives an example of things like obsessive compulsive disorder. Apparently some people, there's lots of different reasons and types of OCD, but one type is the classic, you know, you lock your door to your house, you go to the car, you get in the car, you think, oh, did I really lock the door? So you get out the door, you go back to the house, you check the door's locked. So you go back to the car again, you sit in the car and think, oh, did I really lock the door to the house door? So you get out the car and you go back to the door, you check it, it's still locked. And if you've got a certain form of OCD, you might do that 30, 40, 100 times. Because even though you know that the door is locked, you're not getting that feeling of knowing. You know, there's a feeling which accompanies knowing, and it's so familiar to us that it only, as I say, it's only really visible in its absence. You also see it in things like Capgras syndrome, which is one where you don't recognise your relatives or something like that, or you recognise them, you know it's that person, but you don't get this feeling of knowing. So you might construct a hypothesis that it's an imposter. That's very common in Capgras syndrome. So that whole idea coming out of Burton, as I say, is that, you know, because of the way that our neurology works, you know, a bit of the frontal cortex dips down through the hippocampus into the limbic system, and gives us a little emotional frisson associated with having knowledge of something, which means that it has a felt component. So you have this feeling of knowing something, or a feeling of being certain. Right, so I'm just wondering, in relation to this is the subject of this video, if there's a corresponding feeling of not knowing. And I don't just mean the absence of that feeling of knowing, because that's different. I'm just wondering if there's a different feeling associated with not knowing. The feeling of doubt, I suppose. A feeling of doubt, but not the same as not knowing. Feeling of, oh God, I'm confusing myself. Not just the absence of that feeling of certainty, but the positive generation of a new feeling called not knowing, or doubt. And when it's there in kind of mild form, then it might just appear as a kind of useful skepticism, a useful prompt for us to double check something. Perhaps a little bit of trepidation associated with it, perhaps a little bit of excitement associated with it, a bit of arousal associated with it. You know, there's a little bit of inquisitiveness attached to it. It's that kind of a feeling. But if it's more pronounced, if you have a more pronounced feeling of not knowing, a feeling of uncertainty, then that might start to be slightly more terrifying, or more filling with trepidation a bit more, or filling with excitement a bit more. To you know, deal with your arousal system in a more extreme way, which starts to give that feeling of not knowing an added significance. So there's something important here that I don't know about. This not knowing I've got is important not knowing. And I guess in an extreme form, you know, it would be like the mirror image of the OCD person I spoke about a minute ago. There'd be this very strong sense, very strong significance attached to not knowing something. So the not knowing starts to take on a quality all of its own. It starts to become this huge mystery. It starts to become this highly generative and highly emotionally loaded feeling of not knowing, like you're standing on the void, like you're standing on the shore of nothingness. There's this book by Ray Soor, he writes about that. And that you're immersed in the cloud of unknowing, and it's an enormously powerful cloud. I don't know. I mean, I guess you could do fMRI scans to find that kind of thing out. But there must be some reason for that, I guess. There must be some reason why not knowing has so many different forms, or seems to exist on a gradient from, as I say, this very light sense of not knowing which most of us have. We might just call curiosity, or we might just call not knowing, or we might just say whatever, about, to at the other end of the spectrum, this massive deification of unknowing. So we all appear in this unknowing space. Yeah.